How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. I've been getting a lot of requests recently about re-explaining downing of duck. Now, guys, I have downing of a duck in other videos, but what I did this time was I drew it out. Downing a duck is a very complicated game. It's a game that really plays with the mental well-being of the staff member that's being targeted. It's a game that's very well developed and deals with leverage, but we also have to ask ourselves, why do we do it? How do we find ourselves at that final step? Now remember, guys, when you read Downing of a Duck in Games Criminals Play, it does tell you what the game's about, but it doesn't tell you how it affects the mind of the individual who's being played. The individual has been isolated and now finds the inmates as a resource. And that's what I thought I did by doing these drawings. Now, guys, these drawings are a little bit crude, but it's like, I felt like a teacher for a second. Actually, I do have an inmate manipulation course, so we do cover this, but this is a very important topic, so I wanted to cover it again once more. People are asking for it, so hopefully you guys can understand the crude drawing and get the overall message. It's not just about the staff member being set up, also the support staff, what you have to do to prevent this from happening. All right, guys, so we go to our sponsors, and then when we come back, we will be looking at this little crude drawings that I made to illustrate my story. Now, if you haven't, guys, the show Tier Talks for you, brave men and women that work in corrections. So please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. That bell is going to notify you every time I post a video. We're going to go to our sponsor, come back, Downing a Duck, lesson number 1.
I wanted to attend a university that had an intelligence program. I wanted to look at problems different. I wanted to increase my critical thinking abilities. AMU offered those avenues to expand. Obtaining your degree as an adult, you're actually paying yourself and investing in yourself. You can't put a dollar on it, it's priceless. It's something that can never be taken away from you.
American Military University. Learn from the leader.
Guys, Inmate Manipulation is a course that is highly needed. It's the process that's so slow-moving and subtle that you don't realize it's happening. When inmates choose to manipulate, they manipulate our need to react. Situational awareness and insight is going to save your career. It's going to save you from doing foolish things. Listen to your gut. So the more insight we have, the more we can recognize what isn't so overt, and we can correct our behavior before we fall into a trap that we can't get out of. If you allow an inmate to pull you out of your prescribed role, you are opening up a door for a host of problems. Inmate Manipulation, the psychology behind inmate manipulation. Available now. Link in description. Okay, guys, now remember, in order for manipulation to work, including downing a duck, staff has to be isolated from their support staff. That means that the staff no longer look at their peers for support. Instead, they look towards the inmate population. Again, when inmates choose to manipulate, they have to create the environment for it to be conducive to that game. Remember, they're investing time. So they don't want to do it in an environment that can affect the game that they have to play. So they have to create an environment that pulls the staff member they have targeted away from their peers and eliminate any outside influence to the game that's being played. With that said, by the way, this game could happen to almost anybody. It's crafted for the specific needs of the individual that they're trying to target. But let's just say here, this is a new officer or a new staff member. They're going to be facing a lot of situations that are ambiguous to them. They also have a want to learn. Remember, they're in this profession. They got to learn. They want to find out how to maneuver. So, if this staff member has been already pulled away from his peers, the inmates have set up the perfect game for this staff member. The perfect game. Because now the inmate have set up an environment where that staff member is now forced to look to the inmates as a resource. Remember, they've already disconnected the staff member from his peers. So this route no longer exists. The funny thing about that is why the game's being played while the inmates are isolating this staff member, they're also pushing the peers away. That could be something as simple as when the peers come in, the inmates show a little bit of a connection, however subtle, to that staff member. And the peers see it and like, oh, this guy's definitely too close or she's definitely too close. And instead of the peers avoiding the push and going back to speak to that staff member, they just also cut themselves out of the picture. So now this staff member is truly on an island surrounded by manipulative inmates. Okay, so with that said, you have a staff member here that's still learning the business, still learning how to maneuver. An inmate that's kind of built this rapport has built a false level of trust between themselves and this staff member. And again, that's because this staff member has been isolated from their peers and sees the inmate as a resource. They're forced to. They have nowhere else to go. So once this false level of trust is built, the downing of a duck game can start. Okay? So here's what happens. The request at first is going to be very small. It can't be something that wakes up the staff member and gets the staff member thinking, what the hell am I doing? No, it's got to be something small and subtle, something ambiguous, and something that doesn't automatically break that bond between the inmate and the staff member. Now remember, this inmate here is really not looking for these small requests as a final outcome. What they want is this. Whatever's at the top of this ladder or staircase, whatever you want to call it, they want that. Everything prior to this is leverage. It's leverage that they need because eventually when they go to ask for that final request, the inmate knows at that point that that bond of trust will be broken. Because now, when that officer starts to think like, or that staff member starts to think like, there's no way I'm going to do that. You got to be kidding me. I don't think you're really asking me this. That inmate's going to become aggressive. And the first thing they're going to do is they're going to talk about all the things that have been collected up to that point for leverage. So let's explain how this works. The downing of a duck. This is a very, very dangerous game. So the staff member, again, is going through a situation where he doesn't know what to do. He's sitting on the fence. Now, because the staff member can no longer go to his peers, he is forced to go to the inmate population. So when the inmate asks for something small and subtle, the staff member goes ahead and says, well, it's probably not that big, so I'll go ahead and I'll grant that. Now what happens is the inmate will then, after a while, ask for another request. And the staff member will say, well, number 1 wasn't that bad, and number 2 really isn't that far off from number 1. I'll go ahead and grant that. Now we get to number 3. The inmate will go ahead and request something that's a little higher in scale, a little bit more than what was requested from number 2. It's a very small, subtle creep up. And the staff member will say, well, 2 wasn't that bad, so number 3 can't be that bad. So I'll go ahead and grant it. Same routine as we move up to 4 and 5. Where the staff member's making this mistake as they start to crawl up this ladder is they're failing to see how far they have actually traveled. What they're looking at is each step when they should be looking at the whole picture. So, when the staff member starts to climb up, and let's say they're at number 4, they shouldn't be looking at number 3 or number 2. They should always be looking at the route, number 1. Now look at the travel. Now look at how far you have moved from where you were to where you're at now. All this will now be leverage. With that said, each step that this staff member climbs, they start to justify the choices that they've made. They do that because maybe at first it was questionable, and when they committed to a behavior, they were kind of on the fence with it. But as they start to move up, they start to slowly justify what they're doing. And now the scary thing is that they also believe in what they are doing. The reason why they believe in what they're doing is because there's been no pressure or conflict that represents the other side. Peers are not helping. So this person has no way of understanding what it is that they're doing wrong because they've been isolated from any thought that could influence them in the other direction. Now, when you're staff support and you see this happening, you got to get to the staff member before they get onto that first step. And most of the time, it's probably a feeling. And most of us are concerned that what about if we're wrong? Yeah, okay, that's all right. But what about if you're right? And this person's going down a path. You cannot wait for that outcome. You have to get this staff member the moment they climb onto that first step. If you wait for this staff member to climb all the way to the top, not only is there a greater threat that the outcome that the inmate wants is going to happen, but this staff member believes in everything they are doing at this point. And that can only, if you approach them late in this game, that can only push them closer to the inmate population as a way to justify all their actions beforehand. How scary is that? You got to police each other. Now, once we get to that outcome, so let's say in this case it's number 6, random number. This is going to be a wake-up call for that staff member. That staff member is now going to know that, oh my God, what have I done? What was I doing? And that inmate knows that. So when they go for that final outcome, that false trust is broken now. And the inmate knows he cannot go back, or she cannot go back to what you had before. This is where that inmate will pop all the leverage that they've collected at every prior step. They are doing whatever they can. This is the outcome. They're in desperation. They're doing everything they can to get you to grant that final request, a cell phone, a uniform, a weapon, whatever the case may be, drugs. Now, for the person going through it, the staff member who was isolated, these requests are no longer ambiguous. You know for a fact that a cell phone's wrong. You know for a fact that drugs are wrong. Helping an inmate escape, giving him a weapon. You know that's wrong. But you're in CYA mode. You don't want to get in trouble. So like a fool, more concerned about the leverage that was created against you and the bad choices that you made, you give that inmate the last request. And you put that whole facility at risk. At this point here, guys, there's no forgiveness. Once that final request is asked and once that inmate pulls out all that desperation to get you to do him what he wants done or she wants done, that's when you realize that I made a mistake and you turn yourself in to your supervisor. I know it's hard. I know it's difficult, but the end game is going to be a lot worse. And now the end game doesn't just affect you, it affects your peers. And guys, that's how downing a duck works.